Welcome to another episode of Healing Through Love. Each week, we share ideas, experiences, and resources to increase the awareness of domestic and family violence and to empower survivors to grow and thrive. We talk with experts who share their advice, or with people who have experienced abuse, no matter where they are on their journey. This is all about healing through love. And now, here are your hosts, Charlene Lynch and Rose Davidson.
Embark on a journey of empowerment with Stacey Chillemi, a renowned speaker and 20-time best-selling author, in episode number 86.
I had, told people about what had happened to me, and people came out of the woodwork, helped me. They even sent me to Washington, D.C. to speak in front of Congress. And I just kept going and going and going. And I just wanted to help people. And, I was really intrigued by how we could help ourselves. Like when you're going through a domestic violence, or you're going through, emotional violence, we're very, very vulnerable. And a lot of times our self-esteem is beat up. And I remember one person saying to me, she had a father who was an alcoholic, and she had a very low self-esteem, and she had such great qualities about her. And she looked at me and she said, sometimes when someone tells you something so many times, you tend to believe it. And that's what happens, I think, with people that have emotional abuse and they have physical abuse in their lives, is that they don't think they're worthy. This is who this person is saying, you're no good. No, you're not going to make it.
The Healing Through Love podcast with Charlene Lynch and Rose Davidson.
Hello and welcome to the Healing Through Love podcast. I'm your host, Charlene Lynch from charlenelynch.com. Healing Through Love is here to help victims and survivors of domestic and family violence find their way back to living a more fulfilling and meaningful life. We interview experts and survivors who share their personal stories and offer advice to those who've experienced abuse, no matter where they are on their healing journey. As well as the Healing Through Love podcast, we hold annual Pamper Days here in Adelaide, South Australia, for survivors of domestic and family violence, where local businesses come together and pay it forward with their services and resources to give a much-needed day of indulgence. Think day spa on steroids. We're looking for organisations to partner with us, because today I'm really proud to announce that Healing Through Love has gone global, and we now currently have 8 Pamper Days held in different cities around the globe. So if you feel in alignment with where we're going and what we're doing to help people heal through love, please reach out to us here at Healing Through Love. We'd love to connect with you. Yes, and every week we have amazing guests, and this week is no different. I'd love you to meet our remarkable speaker and coach. She is a 20-time best-selling author with a track record like that. It's no wonder that she's been chosen as one of the top 10 entrepreneurs for 2023 with Apple News, and featured with the Grit Daily. I can't wait to find out more about that. Additionally, this dynamic individual has made headlines, been featured in the Insider, Business Insider, the Yahoo News. They're attracting a whopping 17 million views. And the list just goes on. She's also been guest stars at Dr. Oz Show 5 times and privileged to work with celebrities. The list is huge. Without any more further ado, I'd love to introduce Stacey Chillemi. How are you?
Oh, thank you so much, Charlene, for having me on the show. This has been an honor to be on your show. Thank you very much.
Oh, it's such a privilege that you would be here in our space to help make a difference for our listeners. There has to be a reason why you do what you do. Nobody goes through this amount of effort and energy because just for nothing at all. Like, there's got to be a reason. What got you to where you are right now?
I think one of the things, I'll begin in a few seconds just to tell you my story. But One of the things that happened to me was that I got an email in the mail, and one of the individuals who had read my book, they said they found my book in Barnes and Nobles, and they read it and they followed my regiment, and they said, I just want to say thank you because you saved my life. And they told me that they were on the verge of suicide. And it was right then and there where the light bulb went off, and I realized what my true purpose was. I can't tell you how it's just an amazing feeling when you know that your words of wisdom actually saved another human being's life. I think we take for granted, the words we say and the vocal cords we have, whatever comes out of our mouth or gets put on a piece of paper or gets put on the internet, how deeply it can affect another human being. And when used correctly and responsibly, we could actually help others actually heal themselves and actually learn how to live a happy, healthy, and productive life. And when I saw how I affected someone else's life, and I know for a fact people came out of the woodwork to help me and how they affected my life, I knew right then and there my true calling was to help others. At the age of 5, I had a virus and an ear infection, and my parents heard a gurgling sound in the other room. My mother came into my room and she found me in a grand mal seizure turning blue. They had rushed me to the hospital, and they found that the virus had traveled to my brain, caused encephalitis. And they immediately induced me to a 4-day coma. And they said, most likely if she comes out, she'll be paraplegic or she'll have severe brain damage. And, after the 4th day, my father, who was Greek, he was praying by my bedside, and there used to be one church and one statue in Greece. And that statue was known to have teardrops come down its eyes. And after he finished praying, he looked up and a teardrop rolled from my eyes. And I looked up at him and I said, Daddy, can I have McDonald's French fries? And he was in shock and thrilled at the same time. I wasn't paraplegic. I didn't have severe brain damage, but I did have epilepsy. And life was a struggle for me. And not only did I have to deal with a chronic illness, and I dealt with the ups and downs of trying to get through college and being labelized and stigmatized in the big world, in the corporate world, because of my epilepsy, I also had to deal with problems from home. Unfortunately, my father wasn't very good at dealing with problems. He had a very tough life growing up in Greece. Things were different back then. And when he came to America, he had met my mother, who also had her own problems. And my father was always in denial. He always looked the other way, and he never wanted to realize, what was going on. And his way of dealing with things was basically to either work all the time or go to the racetrack. And so he was one of those responsible gamblers, what you say. He didn't gamble too much where, the house is in debt. He was a great provider, but he had scapegoats and he used them. My mother was a narcissist. She was all about herself. She didn't know how to show love because she wasn't shown love as a child. So when it came to me, she helped me with my epilepsy, but there was one month where she would be a wonderful mother. And then the next month, all of a sudden, this different personality came out, and she was very vindictive and very hurtful. And she purposely tried to do things that another mother wouldn't do to their child. So I never was physically abused, but I was emotionally abused. And I didn't have the support of my father, because he knew that in the beginning, when he tried to open his mouth, things got worse and worse. And the more he said things, the more vindictive and the more things got bad at home. So I came from a house that didn't really have a lot of support. And both of them didn't really know how to show love. Materialistically, both of them were great. Came from a blue collar family, and I was given everything that a child needs in order to live a comfortable life. But I wasn't given love. My mom did a lot of things emotionally, and I grew up in a household where there was a lot of interaction, a lot of yelling, a lot of screaming. I had to leave the house for a while because of, some of the domestic, more emotional, I guess you could say, the emotional abuse. And, I resorted to, meeting the wrong crowds and trying to find people that I could relate to back then, because when you kind of attract the same energy. When, you know, a lot of times you're afraid to tell others about your problems, so you look for people with similar problems, and you know, and that's not always a good solution, because you kind of feed off each other's negative energy. And it got to the point where emotionally, I didn't know how to really to love the right way. I knew there was a better life out there. I wanted to have a normal family. I didn't have a normal family. I didn't get the love that I really wanted. Even though I knew they loved me, they just didn't know how to show it. And my mother's actions of being a narcissist, and, you know, back then they didn't diagnose you, but I would say my mother suffered from manic depression and bipolar. But you know, in her eyes, life was completely different than what reality was. And so when I got older, I met my husband in college, and he came from a very good structured family. And I learned a lot, you know, spending a lot of time with my husband, and seeing what actual, you know, an actually healthy household was. And you know, I try to, you know, establish a new way of living through, you know, and I also reached out and I got help. When I had left the house at age 16, you know, I was kind of forced to leave the house, you know, with the rules and regulations of our state. And, you know, I was put, you know, in foster care, and then I was put into, I went into another area where they gave therapy, and they helped you, and they taught you different ways of dealing with problems. So, you know, I've learned from my own therapy, you know, therapy is very beneficial, but it also is very painful, because you go down and you see those repressed emotions, you know, and you have to deal with them. And when you bring them up to surface, it could be a very painful event. And you know, but at the end, it's very relieving. And to this day, I still use the tools, techniques, and strategies that I learned, and it put me on the right path. I met my husband. He had a structured family. By then, I was actually utilizing what I was taught. So it wasn't that I went there, learned it, and then didn't apply it. I wanted a better life. I knew in the back of my head, I had goals, I had dreams, I had aspirations. And I was determined, you know, between having a chronic illness, between living in a household that had emotional abuse, you know, and living with, you know, I didn't want that for myself. I wanted better. I had goals, and I was determined to reach those goals. And so when I met my husband, I finished school. I went into the corporate world, and you know, life took me on a completely different journey, and I ended up becoming a writer, a coach, helping others. You know, others had come out of the woodwork when I was in my lowest times, helped me. And when I saw how I was impacting other people's lives, I knew it was my true calling to help others, because living with emotional abuse or even physical abuse, because I saw a lot of people, you know, in similar situations have to deal with physical abuse. And sometimes you wonder, you know, I wrote an article, you don't know, when you compare the two, which one is worse. And when I got answers, it pretty much was almost 50-50, you know. And you know, I spent my rest of my life just trying to help others, because I'm very grateful of how others helped me. And I wrote lots of books going through life. I'm a big advocate for the power of positive thinking, gratitude, kindness, really giving back to the world. And really, you know, I think everything I've gone through, between my chronic illness, between having a dysfunctional family, between overcoming everything and overcoming unhealthy habits, I was able to actually utilize all those tools and actually use them to help others. And that's where I spent the rest of my life, was advocating for others, helping others, and then putting together a holistic lifestyle that could help others as well. Not having always to utilize medications and stuff like that. You know, sometimes medication is necessary, but a lot of times we could help ourselves through different tools and techniques and healthy living.
I love it. I feel like we're kindred sisters. I myself got out of home at 15, and but I didn't go to foster care. So that's a different story. But yeah, you know, I think it teaches us a level of resilience to be leaving that environment. And I suppose we have to look back and see the positive in that, that was for us, not, that the whole situation is designed for us as opposed to, done to us, so that we're living in victim space rather than that victim space. Yes. And also as a woman who has, I'm abledly different as well. So not disabled, but abledly different. And what I've understood now is that it's taught me so many lessons. So my question to you is, how has this epilepsy, what lessons have you learned from this challenge?
Well, growing up with a chronic illness, and in the beginning, I was in denial myself. But then, as I got older, I had in college, I didn't even know if I was going to be able to complete it, because at college, my seizures, the late night studying, the stress, my seizures went through the roof. And it got to the point where that was on my bucket list. I wanted to go to college. I had these golden aspirations that I was telling you about, and I didn't know if I was actually going to be able to finish. It was just getting, physically and emotionally, it was getting too much. My body couldn't handle it. And so what I did was I wrote a letter. In the United States, we have these foundations called the Epilepsy Foundation, and they have magazines. Back then they had magazines. Probably everything's on digital now, but back then we actually had magazines, and I wrote an article and I said, how do people with epilepsy cope? How do they get through life? How do they get through these obstacles that they have to go through? And they published it. And I got 300 to 400 letters from all over the United States and Canada, people sharing their stories, sharing how they cope with it. And for the first time in my life, I realized I wasn't alone, because during my whole life, I felt like I was alone. I went to the library, 4 or 5 books written by doctors in medical terminology. If you weren't a doctor, if you weren't in the medical field, you had no clue what these scholars were writing. It just went over your head. And I wanted a book on how to cope. How do we cope with life, with a chronic illness, with a mental illness, with anything, anxiety, whatever. There were no books about that. And so I used those letters to create my own life regimen. And later on in life, I said to myself, I'm going to write a book. And I'm used a lot of those letters. I created the regimen. And on that way, I had started after I graduated. I graduated college, and I got into the big corporate world. I got a really great job. I was living, any girl that just got out of college, their dream job, and life was great. And then one day I had a seizure. I fell to the ground. There was nowhere to hide. I was awake and conscious during the seizure, but I couldn't move. And one of the corporate executives just walked and stepped right over me and kept walking. And I couldn't believe it to myself. I said, oh my God, I can't believe that guy just stepped over me. He didn't stop to pick me up. He didn't stop to help me. Nothing, no care in the world. And I think that's how people have emotional or physical, violence in their home feel, because it's like, no care. Where's the care? Where's the love? And, and then 30 minutes later, an associate producer came over and said, Stacey, you do such a great job, but I'm sorry, you don't meet the qualifications, and I knew it was because I had the seizure. They didn't want anything to do with me because of that. I walked out of there with my head up high. I said, one day I will be a success. I didn't give up on myself. I refused to give up on life. I refused to stay stuck. I said, one day I am going to reach my dreams. I'm going to make my dreams my reality. And I walked out of there, and then, I started my own writing business. I met a lot of people now that are really high in the corporate world that were just starting out back then. And I was doing a lot of writing for them and research. And I happened to come across an herbalist, and he said, I need a lot of research and writing done on holistic living, supplements, vitamins, this and that. I started doing it. And I was saying, wow, a lot of this could apply to my life and help me. And then I started to apply a lot of the things I was learning, and my seizures went from 12 to 11, 10, 9 to 8, to the point they were controlled. So with the utilization of medication, holistic living, changing my sleeping, changing the way I was living, changing the way I dealt with stress, I created different ways to cope with stress. And like you, I also learned that you could take every negative thing that happens to you and pull something positive out of it. You take a negative thing that happens to you and say, well, it made me stronger. It gave me experience. Now I know for the next time that I could do this. I'm capable of this because I did this. And I utilized all that in my head. And I started to just focus on holistic living a healthy and happy life, trying and creating goals, creating short-term goals, long-term goals, and just keep moving forward. And then when I started to help people through my writing and people were responding to me, and I wrote my first book, and then my first book became a bestseller, and someone had, like I told you earlier, wrote me an email and thanked me because I saved their life. I knew right then and there what my purpose in life was. And I just, and during that time, I had, told people about what had happened to me, and people came out of the woodwork, helped me. They even sent me to Washington, D.C. to speak in front of Congress. And I just kept going and going and going. And I just wanted to help people. And, I was really intrigued by how we could help ourselves. Like when you're going through a domestic violence, or you're going through, emotional violence, we're very, very vulnerable. And a lot of times our self-esteem is beat up. And I remember one person saying to me, she had a father who was an alcoholic, and she had a very low self-esteem, and she had such great qualities about her. And she looked at me and she said, sometimes when someone tells you something so many times, you tend to believe it. And that's what happens, I think, with people that have emotional abuse and they have physical abuse in their lives, is that they don't think they're worthy. This is who this person is saying, you're no good. No, you're not going to make it. You're a piece of crap, and this and that. And then you start to believe it. And then you don't think that you're worthy or strong enough to go out there. Or you lived in a 70% of families come from dysfunctional homes. And what happens is every generation, you don't realize it, but you kind of rotate it. You marry into the same type of qualities. That man or woman you meet, I guarantee you, has the qualities of your dysfunctional husband or wife or partner. You tend to the unhealthy behaviors you learn from living in an unhealthy environment as a child. You take that and sometimes you do it and you don't even realize you're copying those behaviors. So it snowballs, and the dysfunctionalism keeps going and going and going until you stop it, and until you say, I don't want to live like this anymore. I'm better than that. And that's where we have to try to help people is when they're emotionally or physically abused, they have to realize that this is not the life they should be living. They're better than that. They deserve more. They deserve a happy, healthy, and productive life, and they could have it. And then showing them, in baby steps, how to get there.
There's so much to unpack in that. I wouldn't even know where to begin. So this is the reasons why we need to read the books, so that we have understanding. Yes, and so something that our audience has in common is, these things that happen for us that at one point in time feel like they're being done to us, that keeping hold of the hope that there is more, that you will survive, like for yourself, moving through the foster care system, knowing that they were having challenges at school and struggling through that, and then the situation that happened corporate. How do you keep the faith? How do you keep leaning in and moving forward when you're in that face of adversity and things don't seem to be presenting as they should? Like, it's one thing after the next. How do you keep that hope to move forward?
I actually wrote a poetry book called Faith, Courage, Wisdom, Strength, and Hope. And I find that those are the keys: having faith. And you don't have to be religious to have faith. You just have to believe in something, whether it's your higher power, whether it's angels, whether it's the universe, whether it's God, whether it's Jesus, whether it's the Buddha. You have to have faith in something. There is something out there. I truly believe we have the universe out there. We have angels. We have spiritual guides. We have people watching over us. The world is when you look at the nature of the world, everything we have, we wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for the energy that we have. We wouldn't have oxygen if there wasn't trees. There's a purpose. There's something out there, and we have to hold on to the faith. And I believe when you call out to the universe shall answer. And and having hope. You can't give up. You can't give up, because if you really look at it, everything I've gone through in life, and I've gone through some pretty crazy things, and even my mother has done some pretty crazy things that no normal mother would do to their child. I never gave up hope. I never gave up hope. And, I refuse, I knew there was something out there that was better. And wisdom, just being able to, take what you learn and use it in a positive way. It made me stronger. It made me see life differently. And even with my chronic illness, I wouldn't look at people today the same way if I didn't have this chronic illness. And when I do public speaking events, I will say that on stage, and people will look at me like I have 6 heads. But you know what? If I lived in that corporate world and I was living the life the same way those people were living, and I got to that level of success, I wouldn't be so empathetic. I wouldn't be so caring. I wouldn't have gratitude. Those people didn't have those characteristics. They were just backstabbing each other to get to a higher position. And I wouldn't be that loving person that I am today, and I feel that, we said faith, courage, wisdom, strength, between all the obstacles you go through, you get strength. Don't let life beat you down. And, there was a point where I felt like every time I moved 3 steps forward, I got knocked back 2 steps, but I kept getting up and I kept trying to move forward. Don't give up. Never give up. I believe there's a purpose and a journey for each of us out there. And we have to really, just listen. And I always love a meditation, because when you clear your mind and you clear your thoughts, sometimes things come to us. Have you ever had, maybe you're listening to music or you listen to a soft sound and then thoughts just rush through your head? I believe that's signs from the universe just talking to us, and listen to what your heart says. I don't believe it's the mind that controls us. I believe it's the heart. Listen to what your heart says. When you think of it, we all have intuition. When we think, if you have ever been walking down the street and you're about to do something and something inside you said, no, don't do that, and then when we go against ourselves, a lot of times it doesn't work out the best. But when we listen to our intuition, good things happen. So it's like really understanding ourselves, understanding our body, understanding what our body needs, understanding what our mind needs. We need to feed our mind, our heart, and our body with fuel, positive energy, and you have to be around positive people. You have to get rid of the negativeness in your life. And you could have good people in your life that have good hearts, but they're very negative. You have to start separating and distancing yourself from those people, because when you're around positive people that have your back, and if you fall, they're going to catch you, those are the people you want to be around. And you want to be around people that are at a little higher status than you. So if they overcame domestic violence, if they overcame emotional abuse, those are the people you want to focus on, because how did they do it? What did they do? And learn from them and absorb their information, and just don't listen, use it, try it, and don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to be on your own. If it comes to the point where you feel you need to get out of this terrible situation, don't be afraid, because whatever you put your mind to, you could accomplish whatever you put your mind to. It's hard work, anything, but you could do it. Anybody can do it if we put our minds together.
Oh, it is so true. Proximity is power. And we are the average of our 5 closest friends. I love this. Stacey. We need to wrap up. We've been talking for 25 minutes. Look at us. I love it. I do want to help our audience have a better understanding of how they can work with you. So maybe you could just explain that.
Okay. So I do a lot of coaching. I help a lot of people. I teach people how to rise above the chaos, become courageous, and move forward in life to reach their true potential. I work with people from all different types of issues. And, you can find me on coachstaceychillemi.com. I also was telling you before we went on air that I have a journal called the Positivity and Gratitude Journal. Sometimes we have to really think about, the things that in our lives that are good, because sometimes when we go through domestic violence and we go through emotional abuse, we tend to lose hope and we lose positivity and we focus on the negative and we lose gratitude. Well, let's take some time out to see what in our life is positive and be thankful and have some gratitude in our lives. And that itself will build and help to strengthen us. And journaling is the best tool to get those emotions out and to start healing. So that's what that book is all about. It's about healing and journaling and really come to realizations with who you are as a person. So that's why I made that journal. And, I do a lot of coaching. I have, different books on positivity and poetry books and stuff like that. All that can be found on my website, and you could contact me, just type my name in and you'll find me on the internet somewhere. And I'm here to help. I love to coach. I love to help people. And that's what I'm here for.
I love it. And in closing, you've also got another website that specializes in the nutrition aspect. Can we quickly cover that?
Sure. It's called Wellness Essentials, and it's Wellness Essential with just essential, no S. So wellnessessential.store. And I have a lot of different vitamins and supplements and different things to help you with anxiety, stress, depression, keeping your mind clear and focused, calmness, things that we go through when we go through these types of problems. And, naturally, there are ways that we can use different types of supplements, so we don't have to go and always go to, using medications, because those medications can be very harsh on the body. They're addictive. And they can also create more symptoms that you don't even realize you're getting from the medication. So I'm not a doctor, and I'm not telling you how to live your life, but it doesn't hurt to try.
Oh, I love it. I love it. As an advocate myself for not taking any medicine, not even Panadol, I absolutely believe that nature does hold the answers. Let's face it, let's start with water. Most of us are not hydrated. It's been fantastic, Stacey, to reach out. And for listeners, the descriptions here, we will have those URLs in the show notes and in the show descriptions. All you'll have to do is just press a link. It's fabulous. And thank you so much for joining us today, Stacey.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Such a privilege. In a world where shadows often fall in the corners of our lives, there is a beacon of hope, and it's Healing Through Love. We're a community dedicated to shifting awareness on domestic and family violence and transforming pain into empowerment. Every story matters. Every voice can make a difference. Join us as we journey together towards healing through love. Your support, your voice can light up the darkness. Healing through love, because everyone deserves a life free from fear. Together, we can make it a reality. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Healing Through Love. You can get further resources, see the show notes, or simply reach out to us via our website at htlaustralia.org. Thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to your company next time on the Healing Through Love podcast.